I unknowingly dated a married man for 3 months, and now his wife is ruining my life. I never thought I'd be writing this kind of post, but here I am, desperate for advice and support. My life has been turned upside down in the span of a few days, and I'm still reeling from the shock and betrayal. I'm Linda, a 27-year-old woman living in New Jersey. Until recently, I was working as a data analyst at a reputable company. I thought I had my life together, a good job, a budding relationship, and plans for the future. But all of that came crashing down when I discovered that the man I'd been dating for the past 3 months, David, a 32-year-old man, was married with a child. This isn't just a story about being deceived by a cheating partner. It's about how one person's lies can have devastating consequences on an innocent party's life. I've lost my job, my reputation is in tatters, and I'm being harassed online and in person by a woman who refuses to see that I'm as much a victim in this situation as she is. I'm writing this post for several reasons. 1. To clear my name and share my side of the story. 2. To warn others about the dangers of trusting too easily. 3. To seek advice on how to move forward from this nightmare. And 4. To expose the true nature of David Waterclear and the unjust actions of his wife, Melissa Waterclear. What follows is the full account of my relationship with David, the dramatic confrontation that exposed his lies, and the ongoing fallout that has left me jobless and branded as a homewrecker. It's a long story, but I hope you'll read it through. I need your support, your advice, and perhaps most importantly, I need to know I'm not alone in this. Here's how it all began. It all started 3 months ago at a conference held at the local university where David works as a professor. I attended the conference as part of my professional development, excited to learn about new trends in data analysis. Little did I know that this event would change my life in ways I never anticipated. David was one of the speakers at the conference. His presentation on data-driven decision-making in academia was engaging and insightful. I was impressed by his knowledge and the way he articulated complex ideas. After his speech, I approached him with a few questions about applying his methods to my work in the private sector. From the moment we started talking, there was an instant connection. David was attentive, listened carefully to my questions, and offered thoughtful responses. He wasn't conventionally handsome, but there was something charming about his kind eyes and warm smile. We ended up chatting for much longer than I had intended, exchanging ideas and laughing at each other's nerdy data jokes. As the conference was wrapping up, David suggested we continue our conversation over coffee sometime. I agreed, thinking it would be a great opportunity to learn more from someone so knowledgeable in my field. We exchanged contact information, and I left the conference feeling excited about the professional connection I had made. Over the next few weeks, David and I began texting regularly. Our conversations quickly expanded beyond work-related topics. We discovered shared interests in books, hiking, and obscure documentaries. David was always eager to hear about my day, offer encouragement when I faced challenges at work, and share interesting articles he thought I'd enjoy. Looking back, I can see how easily I fell for him. David presented himself as this perfect package, intelligent, kind, and genuinely interested in me as a person. He never mentioned a wife or child, and I had no reason to suspect he wasn't single. In fact, he often spoke about how busy he was with work and how he didn't have much of a social life outside of the university. As our connection grew stronger, I found myself developing feelings for David. When he finally asked me out on a proper date, I was thrilled. Our first official date was at a quaint little cafe on the outskirts of town. David claimed he chose it because they had the best pastries in the area. But looking back, I realized it was probably to avoid being seen by anyone who might know him. At the time, though, I found it charming and intimate. That first date led to many more. We'd meet for lunch during my work breaks, have dinner at out-of-the-way restaurants, or go for walks in parks far from the university campus. David always had an excuse for why we couldn't meet on weekends or in the evenings, papers to grade, research to conduct, faculty meetings to attend. I admired his dedication to his work and never questioned it. Our physical relationship progressed slowly, which I appreciated. David was always a gentleman, never pushing for more than I was comfortable with. When we finally became intimate, it felt like a natural progression of our emotional connection. But there were oddities in our relationship that I chose to ignore. David never invited me to his home, always making excuses about his messy apartment or noisy neighbors. He never stayed the night at my place, always leaving before it got too late. We never went out on weekends, and he was always unavailable on holidays. I rationalized these quirks, telling myself that David was just a private person, or that his work really was that demanding. I was so caught up in the romance of it all that I failed to see the red flags waving right in front of me. Looking back, I feel foolish for not questioning these things more. But David had a way of making every explanation sound reasonable, of making me feel selfish for wanting more of his time. He was so good at manipulating the situation that I often ended up feeling guilty for doubting him. For 3 months, I lived in this bubble of what I thought was a blossoming relationship. I was happier than I'd been in years, excited about where things were going with David. I even started daydreaming about a future together. As I mentioned before, there were several peculiarities in my relationship with David that I chose to overlook. However, as time went on, these oddities became more apparent and harder to ignore. Looking back, I realized these were glaring red flags, but at the time, I was too enamored to see them clearly. The most significant issue was David's constant unavailability. He never stayed overnight at my apartment, always leaving before it got too late with excuses about early morning classes or research deadlines. Weekends were completely off limits, supposedly due to grading papers or preparing lectures. Even holidays were a no-go, with David citing faculty obligations or family commitments. When I finally gathered the courage to ask about visiting his place, David became evasive. He claimed he was living with his parents temporarily while looking for a new apartment and that it would be awkward to bring a date home. This excuse seemed flimsy, especially for a 32-year-old professional, but I didn't push the issue out of respect for his privacy. Our dates were always carefully timed and located. We'd meet for breakfast or lunch, never dinner. The restaurants were always in neighboring towns far from the university where he worked. At the time, I thought it was sweet that he was putting effort into finding new places for us to explore. Now I realize he was just avoiding places where he might be recognized. Communication was another area filled with red flags. David would sometimes go radio silent for hours, even a whole day, claiming he had been in long faculty meetings or that his phone had died. He never added me on any social media platforms, saying he preferred to keep his personal and professional lives separate. When I expressed my concerns about these issues, David had a way of turning the conversation around. He'd tell me how much he cared for me, how he was just trying to balance our relationship with his demanding career. He'd make me feel guilty for doubting him, painting himself as a dedicated professor who was doing his best to make time for love. "Linda," he'd say, his voice full of sincerity, "you know how important you are to me, but my career is at a critical point now. I need to stay focused if I want to secure tenure. Can't you understand that?" And I did understand, or at least I thought I did. I prided myself on being an independent, career-oriented woman. I didn't want to be the clingy girlfriend who demanded all of her partner's time and attention, so I swallowed my doubts and continued to make excuses for David's behavior. In hindsight, I can see how naive I was. All the signs were there, practically screaming at me that something wasn't right, but I was so invested in the idea of our relationship, so convinced that I had found something special, that I willfully ignored every warning sign. It was a Tuesday morning like any other. I arrived at the office, greeted my coworkers, and settled in for what I thought would be a typical day of data analysis and team meetings. Little did I know that my world was about to be turned upside down. Around 11 a.m., I received a call from the reception desk. "Miss Linda," the receptionist said, her voice unusually tense, "there's someone here demanding to see you. She says it's urgent." Confused and a little concerned, I made my way to the lobby. As the elevator doors opened, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The usual bustling atmosphere of our reception area had been replaced by an eerie silence. All eyes were on me as I stepped out. That's when I saw her. A woman I didn't recognize, probably in her early 30s, was standing in the center of the lobby. She was well-dressed, her posture rigid with tension, and her eyes, if looks could kill, I would have dropped dead on the spot. Before I could even open my mouth to ask who she was, she lunged at me with a speed that caught everyone off guard. Her hand tangled in my hair, yanking my head back painfully. The sharp crack of her palm against my cheek echoed through the silent lobby. "You home wrecking!" she screamed, her voice bouncing off the walls. The force of her slap had me stumbling backward, my heel catching on the polished floor. I fell hard, my skirt riding up in a final indignity. From my position on the floor, I looked up to see a circle of shocked faces surrounding us, my colleagues, our clients, even the regular delivery guy, all staring wide-eyed at the unfolding drama. I could already see people pulling out their phones, no doubt capturing this humiliating moment for posterity. The woman, David's wife, I realized with dawning horror, towered over me. "Did you think you could just steal my husband and get away with it?" she snarled. "Did you think you could destroy my family and no one would care?" I tried to speak to defend myself, but shock had robbed me of words. I could only shake my head, my eyes filling with tears of confusion and shame. "He has a daughter," she continued, her voice breaking. a 5-year-old little girl who adores her daddy. Did he tell you that while you were spreading your legs for him? Each word felt like another slap. I wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and vanish from sight. But there was nowhere to hide from the accusing stares and the whispers that had started to ripple through the crowd. Security finally arrived, pulling the woman away from me, but she wasn't done. "I want to speak to whoever is in charge here," she demanded. "This company needs to know what kind of immoral homewrecker they have working for them." As they led her away, I remained on the floor, my legs too shaky to stand. My hair was a mess, my makeup smeared with tears, and I could feel the heat of a bruise forming on my cheek, the perfect picture of the guilty other woman, I realized bitterly. Someone I couldn't even register helped me to my feet, but standing somehow felt worse. Now I had to face the sea of judgmental faces head on. I could read the assumptions in their eyes and see the way they were already rewriting their opinions of me. "I didn't know," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "I swear I didn't know he was married." But my words fell on deaf ears. The damage was done. As I stumbled towards the bathroom, desperate for a moment of privacy, I heard the murmur start up behind me. Always knew there was something off about her. No wonder she's been so happy lately. God, imagine being the wife in this situation. I barely made it into a stall before the sobs overtook me. How had this happened? How had I gone from a respected professional to the office pariah in the span of 5 minutes? And how in the world was I going to fix this? As I sat there, my world collapsing around me, I had no idea that this public humiliation was only the beginning of my troubles. After what felt like an eternity in the bathroom stall, I managed to pull myself together enough to face the outside world again. My face was blotchy from crying, my hair a mess, and my clothes rumpled from the altercation. I did my best to make myself presentable, but there was no hiding the red mark on my cheek or the haunted look in my eyes. As I stepped out of the bathroom, the hushed conversations in the hallway immediately ceased. Colleagues who normally greeted me warmly now averted their eyes or gave me looks of poorly concealed judgment. The walk back to my desk felt like running a gauntlet of whispers and stares. I had barely sat down when my phone rang. It was Susan from HR, her voice clipped and professional. "Linda, Mr. Johnson would like to see you in his office immediately." My heart sank. Mr. Johnson was the CEO, and in the 2 years I'd worked here, I'd never been called to his office. With trembling legs, I made my way to the executive floor. As I entered Mr. Johnson's office, I found not just him, but also our head of HR and our company's legal counsel. Their grim expressions told me everything I needed to know. "Linda, please sit down," Mr. Johnson said, his tone carefully neutral. "We need to discuss the incident that occurred earlier." For the next excruciating hour, I tried to explain my side of the story. I showed them text messages between David and me, proving that I truly had no idea he was married. I pleaded with them to understand that I was as much a victim of his deception as his wife was. But as I spoke, I could see the decision had already been made. The sympathetic looks they gave me weren't those of people about to offer support, but of those about to deliver bad news. "Linda," Mr. Johnson finally said, "we believe that you didn't knowingly engage in a relationship with a married man. However, the scene in our lobby today was problematic, to say the least. Several clients witnessed it, and it's already circulating on social media." My stomach churned. I hadn't even considered the possibility of someone recording the confrontation. He continued, "We have to consider the company's reputation. Having you continue to work here would be it would be a constant reminder of this incident. We think it's best for all parties if we part ways." The words hit me like a physical blow. I was being fired, not because of my work performance, which had always been excellent, but because I had the misfortune of being deceived by a lying cheater. "We're prepared to offer you a severance package," the HR director chimed in, sliding a folder across the desk. "In exchange, we'll need you to sign an NDA about the circumstances of your departure." I stared at the folder, feeling numb. This couldn't be happening. In the span of a few hours, I had lost my boyfriend, my reputation, and now my job. As I left Mr. Johnson's office carrying a box with my personal belongings, I could feel the eyes of the entire office on me. The whispers followed me to the elevator, down to the lobby, and out onto the street. Standing on the sidewalk, clutching my box of office knickknacks and potted plants, I felt utterly lost. My career, which I had worked so hard to build, was in shambles. My professional reputation was tarnished, and for what? For falling for the lies of a man I thought I could trust. As I hailed a cab to take me home, I realized that this nightmare was far from over. I still had to confront David to demand answers for why he had so callously ruined my life. The cab ride home was a blur. I stumbled into my apartment, dropped the box of my office belongings, and collapsed onto the couch. For a while, I just sat there, numb and disoriented. But as the shock began to wear off, a new emotion took its place. Anger. White-hot fury coursed through my veins. David had lied to me and used me, and now his deception had cost me my job and my reputation. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number straight to voicemail. I tried again and again, nothing. I fired off a series of texts. David, we need to talk now. You owe me an explanation. Your lies cost me my job. The least you can do is face me. No response. The coward was ghosting me. My anger reached a boiling point. I sent one final message. If you don't show up to explain yourself, I'm coming to your house, or maybe I'll just post the whole story on your university's confession page. Your choice. I paced my apartment, alternating between rage and despair. How could he do this to me, to his wife, to his child? The David I thought I knew would never have been capable of such cruelty. After what felt like an eternity, my phone buzzed a text from David. Meet me at Oakwood Park in an hour. Please don't do anything rash. I let out a bitter laugh. Don't do anything rash? Like lie about being single and date someone for months? I arrived at the park early, my whole body tense with anticipation. When I saw David approach, looking nervous and disheveled, it took every ounce of self-control not to scream at him. Linda, I can explain, he began, his voice pleading. Explain, I hissed. Explain how you lied to me for months. How you made me the other woman without my knowledge or consent. How did your lies cost me my job? David flinched at each accusation. I never meant for things to go this far, he stammered. It started as harmless flirting, but then I fell for you, and I didn't know how to tell you the truth without losing you. So instead you let your wife assault me in front of my colleagues, I spat. Do you have any idea what you've done to my life? As David stumbled through apologies and excuses, I felt my anger give way to disgust. This pathetic lying man was not the person I thought I had fallen in love with. Here's what's going to happen, I said, cutting off his rambling. You're going to email my former company and take full responsibility for this mess. You're going to tell them that I had no idea you were married, and you're going to talk to your wife and make her stop harassing me. David nodded meekly, promising to do as I asked. As I turned to leave, I paused. One more thing, David, stay the hell away from me. If I ever see you again, I won't be responsible for my actions. Walking away from him, I felt a mix of emotions, relief at finally confronting him, lingering anger at his betrayal, and a deep sadness for the relationship I thought we had. I had hoped that after confronting David, things would start to settle down. I couldn't have been more wrong. The day after our meeting in the park, I received a text from David saying he had spoken to his wife, Melissa, and explained everything. He assured me she understood it wasn't my fault and that the harassment would stop. For a brief moment, I felt a glimmer of hope that this nightmare might be ending. That hope was shattered less than an hour later when I opened Facebook. There, at the top of my feed, was a public post from Melissa Waterclear. Warning to all women. This home wrecker, Linda my last name, is a husband stealing who preys on married men. She seduced my husband and tried to break up our family. Don't let her anywhere near your man. The post included a photo of me, clearly taken from David's phone without my knowledge. The comment section was already filling up with people I'd never met, calling me horrible names and passing judgment on my character. My hands shaking, I immediately reported the post and blocked Melissa, but the damage was already done. Within hours, the post had been shared hundreds of times. My phone was blowing up with messages from friends and family asking what was going on. Over the next few days, Melissa's campaign of harassment escalated. She found my LinkedIn profile and left comments accusing me of using sex to advance my career. She somehow got hold of my email address and signed me up for dozens of spam lists, flooding my inbox. She even went as far as to call my parents, telling them what a disgrace I was to the family. Each new attack left me feeling more violated and helpless. I changed my phone number, locked down all my social media accounts, and even considered moving to escape the constant barrage of hate and accusations. The worst part was that no matter how many times I tried to explain my side of the story, no one seemed to care. I tried to defend myself or explain the truth, but people seemed to prefer believing Melissa's version of events. In their eyes, I was the villainous other woman, and nothing I said could change that perception. I tried reaching out to David again, begging him to get his wife under control. His response was pathetic. I'm sorry, Linda. I've tried talking to her, but she's still so angry. Maybe if you just lay low for a while, she'll calm down. Lay low. I wanted to scream. My entire life had been upended. I couldn't even apply for new jobs because any potential employer who Googled my name would find Melissa's accusations. As the days turned into weeks, the intensity of Melissa's harassment didn't diminish. If anything, she seemed to become more creative in her methods of making my life miserable. She posted flyers with my photo around my neighborhood, warning people about the homewrecker in their midst. She even showed up at a job interview I had managed to secure, causing a scene in the lobby that ensured I wouldn't be getting that position. Through it all, David remained silent, refusing to take any real responsibility for the mess he had created. He had chosen to stay with his wife, leaving me to deal with the fallout of his lies alone. I felt trapped, my reputation in tatters, my career in shambles, all because I had the misfortune of falling for the wrong man. As I sat in my apartment, jumping at every notification on my phone, wondering what new humiliation Melissa had in store for me, I realized I needed to take drastic action. That's when I decided to tell my story here on Reddit. I needed to reclaim my narrative and let the world know the truth about David Waterclear and his wife. It was time to fight back. Update. I unknowingly dated a married man for 3 months, and now his wife is ruining my life. First of all, I want to thank everyone who read my original post and offered support and advice. The response has been overwhelming, and for the first time in weeks, I don't feel so alone in this nightmare. Many of you urged me to take legal action, and I'm glad to say I followed that advice. After my post went viral, I still can't believe it reached our lawyer who specializes in defamation and harassment cases. She reached out to me pro bono, saying my story struck a chord with her and she wanted to help. With her guidance, we've taken the following steps. 1. Sent cease and desist letters to both David and Melissa, demanding they stop all forms of harassment and remove any defamatory posts about me. 2. Filed for a restraining order against Melissa, which was granted due to the overwhelming evidence of her harassment. 3. Initiated a defamation lawsuit against both David and Melissa. My lawyer believes we have a strong case, especially given David's admission of lying to me and Melissa's widespread false accusations. 4. Reported Melissa's behavior to her employer. Thanks to the Redditor who found that information for me, they were not happy to learn that she had been using company time and resources to harass me. The legal actions have already had an impact. Melissa has taken down her social media posts about me, and the harassment has significantly decreased. It's not over, but I finally feel like I'm taking back control of my life. But that's not all. Remember how I mentioned that David was a university professor? Well, some amazing Redditors did some digging and discovered that his university has a strict policy against faculty engaging in relationships with conference attendees. Several of you took it upon yourselves to report David's behavior to the university's ethics board. I've since learned that the university has opened an investigation into David's conduct. While I don't know the details, a contact at the university, thank you, kind Redditor told me that David has been suspended pending the results of the investigation. As for my career, I'm still job hunting, but things are looking up. After my story gained traction, I was contacted by several tech companies who were impressed by how I handled the situation. I have 2 promising interviews lined up next week. I know this journey isn't over. The legal proceedings will take time, and I'm still dealing with the emotional fallout of everything that's happened. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. To everyone who offered support, advice, and even tangible help, thank you. You've reminded me that for every David and Melissa in the world, there are countless good people willing to stand up for what's right. I'll update again when there are significant developments in the legal case or with my job search. Until then, thank you again, Reddit. You've helped me find the strength to fight back and reclaim my life.